Hello everyone, this is XiaoT giving you a shoutcast between XiaoT and Terran here on Scrap Station, and wow, now we have double the amount of in-game advertisers. Anyways, we have XiaoT spawning as the blue Protoss player at the 12 o'clock position. Meanwhile, we have Terran spawning as the red Terran player over here at the 3 o'clock position. One quick thing to note, the players did not actually type out that sentence about different websites. That was inserted by the website team. So these players are not trying to promote any website in particular that I know of. Don't hark on them, and don't ask why they are trying to promote any particular websites. Anyways, into this game, we have a supply depot and a pylon currently being built. Supply depot being built on the backside here on Scrap Station. Meanwhile, XiaoT getting a pylon over here. And now with this early pylon, we'll be able to get a gateway perhaps down in this position. I assume that's going to be his strategy, perhaps a 12 or 13 gateway. As this game gets underway, we now also have a scouting probe coming in from XiaoT. So XiaoT moving out with a probe will be able to get a decent amount of sight on this base, and I'm waiting to see if we're going to see any barracks or racks. We already have a barracks coming into play by Terran, and now Terran should be getting also a refinery in just a second, perhaps waiting for that 75 minerals as an SCV comes off the mineral line, and now trying to deal with this one probe. Probe harassment, always so difficult to deal with as a Terran player. That SCV is constantly exposed and really easy to get taken out, and now we see one SCV continue to chase around, and I like this play by Terran. What Terran is doing is Terran is constantly using a new SCV, and what this is going to do is cause it so that the probe will not be able to recharge its shields. Now, shields recharge, I believe, after 10 game seconds or 15 game seconds, somewhere in that realm, and then they start to recharge their shields. If you're able to get an SCV to start zapping it a little bit earlier, what you can do is you can interrupt that recharge timer, and then that probe will not be able to come back with fresh hit points every single time. We now see Marines now being trained out in this position, as we also have a refinery currently being built. A Cybernetics core also coming into play with double pylons in this position over here, so it's going to be a gateway into a Cybernetics core. Pretty much a standard build so far, as now we see XiaoT going for a second assimilator. Now, a lot of people may be wondering why I call him XiaoT, and it's actually because Xiao is XAIO according to the Chinese pronunciation, and then the T at the end is a play on words. So you can either say it's XiaoT or XiaoT, and I believe that's how it wants to be said. As a Marine now tries to make its way to take down this one probe over here. I never noticed that these little biodomes actually vent off gas, so pretty interesting. And anyways, don't get distracted by the doodads. XiaoT now continuing to just train up more and more probes. We now have a harvester advantage for XiaoT. However, the Terran player, Terran, does have the same amount of mining on minerals, or in fact a little bit higher, just because of this mule. He is also now trying to mine additional gas as well, and I think that he's only has I don't know how, but he's somehow actually mining less gas than his opponent, even though he has 3 SCVs on each one. No, he's actually finally starting to manage out once again. Factory now being lifted off, and now will be flying into the base of XiaoT. So XiaoT will be scouted out by that early factory. We now see one stalker making its way across the map, trying to make sure that there is no Marine over here by the Zelnaga watchtower. One factory now flying in, will be able to quickly see a Stargate being warped in. So XiaoT also going for that Stargate, and maybe going for Void Rays. Taking a look, we also see the Terran player going for a starport. So as this one factory now comes into place and scouts out this Stargate, he may try to go for earlier Vikings. We should perhaps also see a reactor also be built by a barracks if there was enough room. No, not going to have enough room. So this starport will be forced to try to train up some Vikings and counter the Phoenixes and Void Rays that may be coming out in just a moment. Stalker now trying to deal some damage towards this factory. Factory, however, has a fair amount of hit points. Will be able to take a lot of damage and a lot of punishment from these stalkers. So stalker is able to get underneath it and start shooting it continuously as this factory now deciding to pull back, and will be able to barely escape there. We now have one Phoenix up and running, and perhaps a second Phoenix will be coming out and joining on this fight as well. The Phoenix may also try to deal some damage towards that factory. However, it will only be able to deal a minimal amount of damage, as we now have a Viking joining in on this fight as well. One of the key things that you need to remember about Viking versus Phoenixes is that the Phoenix will most likely win in a fight. The reason behind that is the Phoenix has additional hit points, 60 shields and 120 hit points, just compared to the base of 125 on this Viking. On top of that, the Viking only deals additional bonus damage towards armored, and the Phoenix attacks almost 100% faster than a Phoenix. Sorry, a Phoenix almost attacks 100% faster than a Viking, so that is why the Viking would actually end up dealing less damage over time. And now, especially with 2 Phoenixes in play, those Phoenixes will be able to focus down this one Viking and shoot it out of the sky. There are a lot of Marines, however, here, so those Marines will be able to get some damage. Are we going to Graviton Beam? Yeah, Graviton Beam the Mule and try to take it down. The Mule is now down to 60 hit points, and there it goes. We do see one Lancer Torpedo able to shoot down that Phoenix. However, that Phoenix still only lost all of its shields so far, so those shields will be able to regenerate in just a moment, and the Protoss strength of those shields will be able to come back in with a fresh Phoenix in just a second. We still see more Phoenixes being built by SciaoT, so SciaoT continuing with this Phoenix harassment, which I really like. And Phoenix harassment is one of those things that you don't see all too often, especially against a Terran player recently. However, now Graviton beaming more and more of these SCVs, and this is going to cause a lot of issues for the mineral line of the Terran player. Terran now losing 2 of those SCVs and continuing to move out. We do see a lot of Marines, Marauders now trying to take down this set of destructible rocks over here, and the Phoenixes perhaps looking for that army will be able to come across this in just a second, now trying to take down damage over there. Those Phoenixes may be able to get within 0 attack range, and I'll try to deal damage. Will those Marines on the ground be able to deal enough damage towards those Phoenixes? Phoenixes able, one of them goes down, and now another one still in play, trying to get more and more damage done. Are those Marines going to be able to deal more damage towards those Phoenix? No, they're too busy focusing on those rocks instead, and now another Medivac gets taken down. However, one set of rocks have been taken down as well, so these Phoenixes continuing to do more harassment. It looks as though one Viking has been taken down, and this Medivac most likely will get taken down as well. More Marauders and Marines trying to come in and join in on that fight. Marines using that stim pack, trying to get underneath those Phoenixes. However, the Phoenix able to deal so much damage. Reactor swap now on that starport in order to double train more and more units. Terran players should also consider getting an orbital command onto that one building there, onto this command center, in order to be able to call down more and more mules. The longer this game goes, the better it will be for the Terran player, as he already has established his second command center. It will take some time to lift it off into this location. I also expect that the Terran player should be getting some missile turrets, or at least be producing Vikings. We already see SciaoT going for Colossi with the extended thermal lance research. However, I don't think that's a really great choice by SciaoT, especially considering that you can already see that the Terran player now trying to get more Vikings to counter the simple amount of Phoenixes. I think it would have been better if he had went for a High Templar and used High Templar Psystorm in order to deal damage. So we'll see how this is going to work out, as those Vikings will be able to counter both those Phoenixes and those Colossi in just a moment. We have a lot of Marauders now continuing to be trained, as one SCV and one probe continue to wander around the map. Nexus has been established over here, 50% built, and we'll be able to transfer some probes from the main location into the expansion in just a moment as well. So Colossi continuing to be trained. We should see an additional Colossi being trained in just a moment, and Colossi really like to reach critical mass. Once you have 3 or 4 Colossi with that extended thermal lance range, it is very easy to get a lot of damage dealt across multiple Marine and infantry units. Stalkers now being warped into play as well, and now with 2 Colossi, no level 1 weapons research though, and with 2 Colossi now in play, as soon as the 3rd one is produced, we should probably see these units move out. I do not see enough Stalkers to deal with the amount of Vikings that are currently in the air though. We still have 4 Vikings in the air, and this is one of the reasons why I thought High Templar may have been a better choice in this fight. Colossi coming in, able to slice through that one unit very quickly, and now more Stalkers still being trained. Production wise, we do not see any additional Colossi, so it's only going to be 2 Colossi with a level 9 range. And now these Marines and Marauders deciding to pull back, knowing that they'll most likely fall to that army as more Vikings need to be macroed up. You currently see a group of Vikings now very tightly packed together here, and that what that tightly group of Vikings is going to make it do is it's going to make it more difficult for units to focus fire, and also those Vikings will be able to get off one round of attack very quickly onto Colossi very easily as well. So 8 Vikings now in the air, 8 times 24, almost 200 damage. It was 192 damage, give or take a couple points of damage, as now SCVs continuing to mine out here. A little surprised that Terran player is not going for these additional refineries, as this fight now moves out, able to take down that one exposed pylon there. One Marine now trying to move out. That Marine, however, going to take a lot of damage from 2 Colossi. Vikings able to get 1 round of attack off, and almost able to get through the heavy shields of that Colossus. However, that Colossus has 150 points of shield, so we'll be able to just continue to sit there and gain up more and more hit points as well. One Phoenix scouting out over in this direction, perhaps looking to get more damage and perhaps trying to graviton beam any additional mules that he can find. Production wise, we now see a Ghost joining in on this army. So as Ghosts join in on this army, we'll see some EMP shockwaves. And perhaps by depleting the shields of those units, and those Colossi will fall a little bit more quickly, in addition to those Marauders and those Zealots. So we have, what, eight Vikings now in the air, one round of attack, quickly getting a lot of damage dealt across one of those Colossi. Colossi already down to only 132 hit points, as so many Vikings in the air able to deal a lot of damage very, very quickly. 28 times 8 is actually 220 damage. So yeah, that's a very, very nice amount of damage. And there are, however, the Colossi does have one piece of armor, so that's why it didn't deal the full 220 or whatever I said in just a moment ago. We also see some sentries joining in on this fight, and now with SciaoT getting 4 Colossi, those Colossi will be able to deal a lot of damage, and you can see those Vikings trying to go after those units. EMP shockwave hitting, and now more fighting coming back in. Force fields also coming into play as well. Stalkers need to get underneath those Vikings. No Stalker blink, however, so those Vikings continue to take a lot of damage, and now those Colossi able to just slice through this army here. Stalkers now trying to poke through once again. However, no force fields. No force fields. A lot of those sentries were taken down very, very quickly. Colossi, Stalkers now trying to give chase once again. Another Colossi getting taken down here. Vikings giving chase against those Colossi. Stalkers now trying to take down those Vikings, fighting back and forth. However, with no Twilight Council, no Stalker blink, and no Zealot charge, SciaoT just doesn't have the movement speed in order to try to push. We now also see some Immortals joining in on this fight. However, with the sheer numbers of Marines and Marauders, even with Stimpack, those Marauders will be able to get a lot of damage dealt very quickly across that Immortal. All that Immortal really has is 400 hit points against those Marauders here. And now those Marauders now simply going to do a drop straight into the base, and this is going to catch SciaoT very, very much off guard as the Marauders are being dropped out of the sky. Very, very nice drop positioning coming into here. Marauders now trying to go after some of those Stalkers. Zealots now trying to give chase as well. Stalkers in the front, and more of those Colossi continue to deal more damage, and now picking up more units being warped in on that backside. Will they be enough to shoot down and get some damage across that medevac? Medevac down to 31 hit points and able to be saved. There are no Phoenixes in the air to try to give chase towards these units, and the medevac able to come back home. Perhaps some SCVs will try to repair some of those medevacs. Medevacs are very gas intensive at 100 a pop, so it would be very beneficial for the Terran player to just repair all of these medevacs quickly. We also see that the Marauders do not have any weapons upgrade, and now 2 Ghosts now being trained. So with double Ghosts now being trained, and now we see the Terran player trying to take a third base. It's going to matter who can hold on to this third base more critically. This Nexus down over here has just been completed, as these probes are also making their way down. 11 probes now being transferred, as we now have 3 Colossi in the air, a couple of probes and Stalkers on the ground. No weapons upgrade, however, so those Colossi will not be able to slice through that ground infantry army all that easily. We do see a lot of units over here now. SCVs are trying to repair these Vikings. We also have a decent amount of medevacs in the air, 5 medevacs, a couple Ghosts also leading the charge, and we also have a nuke armed and ready for that Ghost to drop down. Will the Ghost be able to call down a nuke? And now we do see a call down of a nuke, and I like this positioning. What this is going to do is it's going to make it very, very difficult for the Protoss player to try to come back in. If he moves into this location over here, that's going to be very, very bad sight, and yes, he's just going to take a lot of damage. In comes that nuke, all that damage dealt, and perfectly setting up that trap there to completely deal 200 damage across the board to that army there, and SciaoT leaves the game. So a really, really well-timed psychological nuke by the Terran player, hitting on top of units when they were trying to reinforce their army, and caused SciaoT to leave the game. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. I hope you guys enjoyed this 1v1 replay between SciaoT and the Terran player here on Scrap Station.